In the process of preparing my speech, I began to look back on my career as a ballerina, and I looked back on what was the moment that inspired me to pursue ballet lessons. The defining moment that comes to mind was when I was 3 to 4 years old, and my family and I had seen the Nutcracker Ballet. I had loved the music, the costumes, and how the dancers seemed to glide across the stage. I knew that I wanted to become a part of that world. From elementary school to high school, I had been in many ballet recitals. My favorite performance was when I was in high school, and this was my last time on stage. We had performed the Nutcracker Ballet, and this was the ballet that had started it all for me. Now, I did not have any parts in this ballet. I was a party guest for most of it. However, I look back on that memory very fondly. Now, this experience completely changed my perspective because time that I thought the dancers had with changing out of their costumes and getting to the right place on stage, time that I thought we had enough of, it turns out we didn't have a lot of time. In fact, it was very chaotic and everyone was running back and forth, rushing to get changed into their next costumes and get into the right placements on stage. It was really stressful helping the dancers get changed, but I enjoyed every second of it. As stated before, this changed my perspective on ballet as it showed what really happens backstage. And if this is what happens backstage, then what other secrets is ballet hiding? How did ballet come to be? How did we get the costumes, the music, the stories, everything that we know about ballet? How did we get to what we have today? Today I'm going to share with you the evolution of ballet. I'm going to share with you on how it was created and how it came to be the ballets that we love and know today. It has been used in different ways as forms of entertainment for many generations, and it has evolved since its creation, as well as the movements and wardrobes used for these performances. Ballet did not start in France as many would believe. Ballet was originally created in Italy during the Renaissance as a form of entertainment for the aristocratic courts in the 1500s. Observation of multiple articles regarding the history of ballet, many authors have confirmed that ballets took place in the Italian Renaissance courts for entertainment. They were performed for the aristocrats and royalty. The performances in court were originally performed by kings and princes, males of the courts. Sometimes the courtiers would perform in the ballets performed. However, those who would be watching would often be pulled into the dances to join in. Catherine de' Medici, who was passionate about the fine arts, had created this entertainment in the court, and with her marriage to King Louis II, it began its transition of ballet to France. 17th century of France, Louis XIV had kick-started the interest in ballet. Louis XIV had practiced ballet vigorously and had worked on the founding of the Académie Royale de Danse. However, after the monarchy was overthrown during the French Revolution, the ballet school had later changed into the Paris Opera Ballet. Ballet's transition into France had begun the stages of further refining and polishing the movements and developing the stories used in ballet. They were beginning to evolve, and ballet was becoming an opportunity for female dancers to become a part of. In 1850, Russia began to develop their own perspective on ballet, and it further refined the art. At this point, this is when the traditional movements, storylines, and costumes that we are familiar with were beginning to be developed. At this point, the styles developed by Russia were beginning to spread to different cultures across Europe who were also developing their own perspective of ballet. The creation of ballet has had an evolving history, but other factors in ballet have experienced evolution as well. One of the other aspects that has changed is the movements. Now, ballet did not begin with the movements that we are used to seeing on stage. Instead, while researching the dances originally performed in the Italian courts, the dances used were not flexible or gravity-defying movements. Instead, the dances used then consisted mostly of gentle turns, slides, curtsies, and small hops. The movements then were more restrictive. However, the five basic positions of first, second, third, fourth, and fifth were used and later refined to what many cultures in ballet continue to use for their choreography. Ballet had later transitioned into France. The style of ballet and the movements became more romantic and female-based as it became more fluid and removed the earlier restrictions that were in place during the Renaissance. In the late 19th century, when ballet had transitioned to Russia, they had westernized the early forms and techniques developed, later developing a majority of ballets that we are more familiar with. Movements in ballet begins to catch our interest, but what else catches our interest in ballet? The costumes grab our interest and begins to bring the characters to life. Now, we are all inspired by the costumes on stage. However, during the 1500s to 1600s, the costumes instead were very restrictive outfits that were beautiful, but it made it hard for those wearing them to dance in. The costumes themselves would be very heavy with decorations, and most of the times the dancers would be wearing these masks and have very large headdresses that further restricted their movements. The early performances of ballet, most of the dancers would wear heeled shoes instead of the shoes that we are used to seeing on stage. With ballet's transition into France and Russia, they began to strip away the heavy costumes used in the courts and change them into the tutus and leotards that we are used to seeing. During the 1730s, a Paris opera ballet dancer, Marie Camargo, had taken the first steps in making a change in the ballet shoes. She had removed the heel in her shoe and created the soft shoe that we see beginning dancers use. Making this alteration allowed this dancer to make leaps and other movements that the traditional heeled shoe prevented. Marie Taglioni became the first dancer to dance through an entire ballet performance on pointe shoes in the ballet La Sylphide. She began to take the first steps in modernizing the shoes that dancers would use. In the 19th century, Italian shoemakers began to further develop pointe shoes by using stiff boxes of newspaper, flour paste, and pasteboards. They would reinforce the shoes with leather. Each era would introduce a new change in the shoes, where they would later incorporate leather soles in the shoes or manufacture the shoes to become more contemporary and provide more room for the shoe to be able to stretch as the foot expands to reduce injury. The costumes used in ballet tell us something about the parts that the dancers play, but what story are they telling? The stories are the parts that brings the ballet all together. Stories that we are used to seeing on stage mostly focused on the Nutcracker, Swan Lake, Romeo and Juliet, Sleeping Beauty, and Giselle. However, these were not the stories that originally started the path of ballet. The earliest ballet that has been recorded is Le Ballet Comique de la Reine. This ballet was performed in 1581. Catherine de' Medici had created the performance for her sister. Those who had performed in the ballet were herself, the king, and the members of the court. The ballet itself had lasted for 5 hours, and the story itself was inspired by Circe from the story by Homer, the Great Odyssey. This ballet was one of the first ballets recorded. However, there are those who believe that there were earlier ballets performed even before then. In the times between 1830 to 1850, this was known as the Golden Age of ballet, as this was the time that most of the ballets that we continue to see today were being developed. Ballet classics such as Giselle, developed in 1841, has been continuously modernized, and new adaptations are made with each ballet company. The center of ballet continued to move forward in the 19th century in St. Petersburg, Russia. And as previously stated, this is where ballet was further developed and refined. Ballets from 1890 to 1895, such as the Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, and Swan Lake, were composed and endured time and managed to become the well-beloved ballets that have touched the hearts of many. The stories provide a plot for the ballet, but what makes the ballet all come together? The music composed plays a great role in the evolution of ballet. In ballet, we are familiar with the works of Tchaikovsky and other composers. However, we did not originally start with these musical pieces. Referring back to when ballet was first created, there was no music that was played with the dances. During that time, the belief then was that the focus should be on the dancers rather than what should accompany the dances. In the Baroque era of ballet, this belief began to change, and more began to ponder the possibilities of adding music. In 1653, Giovanni Battista Lulli, or John Baptiste Lulli, had composed music for a ballet performed in court by Louis XIV. Lully's composition for this ballet piece in court had added another element of a narrative to the dances performed. The music that would accompany ballet became prominent in the 18th century with composer Jean-Philippe Rameau and his opera ballet. The music that accompanied the ballet had attracted the interest of the royalty in court. With the evolution of ballet and the possibilities of music, it had created an opportunity for composers to create new compositions to accompany the dancers. With the changes to the costumes and shoes, ballet composers followed this similar change in matching their music to the movements of the dancers. They strived to tell a story with their music that emphasized the stories that the dancers were telling. However, there were some composers that considered ballet compositions to be inferior to orchestra pieces. However, in Russia, Tchaikovsky had changed this mindset. Tchaikovsky had studied different ballet composers or specialists as he was composing Swan Lake. He had utilized his background as a composer and the details of a ballet composer to develop the composition of Swan Lake. However, at the time, after he'd finished his score, there were those who believed that his composition was too complex to perform to. In addition, when the time came for the premiere in 1877, it did not initially receive a lot of success. After some time, though, in 1895, things were reorganized and the ballet was made a success as originally intended. In the approach of the 19th century, compositions for ballet were continuously being developed. One of the most notable composers at that time was Igor Stravinsky, the composer of The Firebird. Stravinsky was young when he had created this composition. He was 27 when he had finished the score. One of his other well-known compositions was The Rite of Spring. Stravinsky took leading role in leading the music for ballet to a new age. New compositions of music for ballet are still being developed. Some are taking a modern take for their compositions, while others continue to refer to the Baroque Romantic era of ballet music. Compositions for ballet are continuously evolving and improving. The world of ballet holds many secrets that have not been discovered yet. Our perspective of ballet and what goes behind the process can still be changed. How ballet had started and how it has evolved has opened different doors to what we had previously assumed about ballet. We've been able to see how the dances, music, stories, costumes, and shoes have all evolved. However, I believe that there is more to discover about ballet. Ballet hasn't stopped evolving, it will continue to change. There are still some hidden secrets in the past of ballet that have not been discovered yet. And there are new secrets of ballet that are being developed now that are waiting to be found.